At my wedding, a situation unfolded that I could hardly believe. My in-laws, having indulged a bit too much, became the center of whispered gossip among the guests. In a surprising outburst, they confronted me loudly, proclaiming that now I was married, if I wanted to truly belong to their family, I needed to prove my financial worth. They demanded an additional $5,000 monthly, echoing sentiments my father-in-law expressed. The room fell silent, and I was left stunned by their audacity, feeling my face lose color from the shock. Thankfully, my father intervened. Taking the microphone, he firmly addressed them, highlighting the embarrassment they were causing. His decisive words brought some relief to an otherwise tense moment. My name is Betty Rachel, and I'm a 33-year-old. Currently, I'm engaged to Stephen, a 35-year-old I met through a friend concerned about my prolonged single status. After losing my mother at a young age, my father took on the role of both parents, working tirelessly to provide for me. This loss deeply affected me, leading me to guard my emotions closely, which meant I rarely dated seriously. Despite my initial reservations about Stephen, his persistent care and respect gradually won me over. He was always a gentleman, and over time, his unwavering support and kindness allowed me to open my heart. Dating him brought happiness back into my life, making him incredibly special to me. As my relationship with Stephen deepened, I found myself imagining a future together forever. When he proposed, it felt like the natural next step for us. Stephen had always been incredibly understanding and kind, constantly reassuring me with his supportive words. Don't worry if you're ever feeling unsure about something. I'll be here for you until you feel better. I love you, Betty. You can count on me. His promises to make me happy warmed my heart profoundly, and I knew I wanted to offer him the same depth of care and commitment. When I shared the news of our engagement with my father, his reaction was one of overwhelming joy. He even shed tears. "Wow, Betty, you're finally getting married. I'm so happy for you," he exclaimed. I playfully called him dramatic, which led to a touching conversation where he revealed his quiet fears of me never settling down. It was a moment that showed me just how deeply he cared. Thanking my dad felt especially meaningful, knowing he had raised me on his own. I anticipated that the wedding would be an emotional day for both of us, probably with more tears from him, given how emotional he was now. With our engagement in place, Stephen and I began the hectic journey of wedding planning. Balancing our demanding jobs with wedding preparations meant our weekends were packed, and our schedules were bursting at the seams. There was hardly any time to rest, but we managed, keeping our spirits high. A special moment was on the horizon, meeting Stephen's parents for the first time. Although Stephen had previously met my father shortly after he proposed, scheduling conflicts had delayed my introduction to his parents. Finally, a visit was arranged. As we approached his parents' house, I felt a surge of nervousness, but Stephen was quick to comfort me. "Don't worry, my parents are very kind," he assured me, helping ease my anxiety as we stepped into what would be a significant new chapter in our lives together. When I rang the doorbell at Stephen's family home, it was his mother who greeted us. "Mom, I'm home," Stephen announced cheerfully. She responded with a warm smile. "Welcome home, Stephen. It's so good of you to come." As she engaged in a light conversation with her son, I introduced myself politely. "Nice to meet you. My name is Betty, and I'm Stephen's fiancée." Her demeanor changed subtly as she turned to me, her voice dropping a notch from the cheerful tone she used with Stephen, and her smile fading. "So, you're Betty," she noted, giving me a thorough once-over that felt more like a judgment than a greeting. She then led us into the living room, where her cool attitude persisted. "Betty, I'm curious about what you bring to the table. Stephen is our treasure and our only child. If you're going to marry him, you need to be a suitable wife. Are you worthy of him?" she asked, her tone sharp, making the question feel like an interrogation. I was taken aback by the unexpected harshness from my future mother-in-law and struggled to find words. "You're going to join our family, you know. Are you ready for that?" she continued. Her words implied a weight of expectation that seemed disproportionate. After all, I wasn't marrying into a royal or famously distinguished family. Why such a heavy commitment was expected just because I was marrying her son puzzled me. As I pondered how to respond to her pressing questions, she grew impatient with my silence and snapped, "When I ask you a question, answer me right away. You're so rude." Her voice rose with intensity, pushing for an immediate response. Despite feeling overwhelmed, I managed to respond, "I hope that Stephen and I will support each other throughout our marriage." This did not satisfy her. She retorted, "What a naive thing to say. You aren't just going to support each other. You're supposed to support Stephen. It's your job as a wife to support your husband. You don't even understand the basics," she criticized harshly. At this point, Stephen's father, who had been quietly observing the exchange, stepped in. "Honey, calm down," he interjected gently. Turning to me, he apologized. "Sorry about that, Betty. You must have been startled by my wife's words," he said, attempting to diffuse the tension with a calm demeanor. As I tried to remain composed, I reminded myself that Stephen's mother was fiercely protective of her only son. Perhaps her sharp words were just nerves speaking out of turn. Just then, Stephen's brother entered the room, his demeanor quiet, calm, and gentle. His presence momentarily soothed the tense atmosphere. However, this brief respite vanished when he, with a disarming smile, voiced his support for his mother's harsh words. "What my wife says is justified. What concerns me the most is that you come from a single-parent family," he remarked. Confused, I asked, "What do you mean by that?" "Being raised by just one parent doesn't have a good public image. We can't be too happy to have such a person become the wife of our only son, can we?" he explained. "Hold on a minute," I interjected, unable to let his comment pass unchallenged. "What is wrong with being raised by a single parent? My father worked very hard to raise me by himself. I am very thankful for my upbringing and proud of my father. Being raised by a single parent doesn't make me any less valuable." Yet they continued to argue. "Since you were missing one parent, you couldn't have learned how to be a good wife, do housework and such," they claimed. I responded firmly, "I did a lot of housework to help my father. I can also cook pretty well, so please don't say that." Despite my rebuttal, Stephen's mother ignored my words and finally stated, "I will allow you to marry Stephen, but in exchange you must promise to devote everything to us because we are Stephen's parents. Can you promise me that?" I was taken aback by her demands. "What? Since you came here to ask for our permission to marry our son, you do know what your duties are, don't you?" Before I could articulate more, he continued the conversation, making it clear that my in-laws were dominating the discussion, leaving little room for me to express my views. That night, as I reflected on the marriage, I realized how much this conversation had affected me. The evening had been overwhelming, and it prompted deep thoughts about the dynamics I was about to enter into with Stephen's family. Feeling the weight of our recent visit with Stephen's parents, I decided it was important to discuss my feelings with him. "Stephen, do your parents always talk to people like that?" I asked, hoping for some insight or support. Stephen seemed unaffected by the question. "What about it?" he replied, clearly not seeing the issue. I continued, trying to clarify my concerns. "Well, I mean the way your parents spoke to me and what they said," I explained. "Oh, really? Well, they were just talking about whether you were ready for this marriage," he responded nonchalantly. I understood that Stephen's parents were concerned about their son's future, but their approach felt excessive. "I get that your parents are worried, but what they said felt like too much," I pointed out. "Really? Why is that?" "My parents didn't say anything wrong. Besides, they've permitted us to get married, so don't worry about it," he reassured me. His response troubled me. It seemed he was more aligned with his parents' views than with understanding my feelings. Perhaps sensing my unease, Stephen hugged me. "Betty, you don't have to worry so much. My parents are just a bit upset because their only son is getting married," he explained. though his words felt like he didn't fully grasp my concerns. "It's all going to be fine. Don't overthink it. I'm sure they just want what's best for us. They want us to be as good of a couple as they are. That's why they were a bit harsh," he added. "Oh?" I replied, somewhat skeptically. Stephen seemed to think his parents' high expectations were normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't right for them to diminish me simply because I was raised by a single parent. I didn't believe that people who expressed such views were truly supportive partners. We are the ones getting married, and we should be the focus, not their approval or disapproval, I thought to myself. While still upset, I decided not to dwell too much on his parents' opinions. Then the wedding day arrived. The venue was filled with our relatives, friends, colleagues, and bosses. As I walked down the aisle with my father, who had lovingly raised me, I felt a mix of emotions. Stephen and I exchanged our vows and rings, and the room erupted in applause. Despite the challenges, this was our moment, and I was determined to cherish it. As I walked down the aisle with Stephen, the reality that I was truly marrying him sank in deeply, filling me with a joy I had never experienced before. The reception hall was bustling as we entered, greeted by videos of our journey together playing in the background, adding a personal touch to the celebrations. It was a joyful moment, reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in a while and receiving heartfelt congratulations from many. Despite my initial reservations about Stephen's parents, I felt relieved and genuinely happy that I had chosen to marry Stephen. We planned to officially register our marriage after the ceremony, a step that would officially unite us as husband and wife. I savored every moment, basking in the happiness of the day. But as the event progressed and it came time for the formalities of greeting our guests, a sense of unease returned. Stephen's parents, standing in line with us, were noticeably unstable on their feet. Their faces flushed a deep red, clear signs they had indulged too much in the celebration. Some relatives quietly inquired if they were all right. It was embarrassing, but we needed to proceed with the ceremony's conclusion. The moment the microphone was handed to us, Stephen's mother unexpectedly grabbed my hand, pulling me away from him, and yelled with an intensity that mirrored a professional wrestler in a match. "Listen to me, Betty. After this wedding, you're going to devote yourself to us completely. Prepare yourself because we are going to test you hard." The guests murmured among themselves, some chuckling, thinking it was a jest. Then, taking a turn for the worse, Stephen's father snatched the microphone and pointedly criticized my appearance. "Betty, don't you feel embarrassed to wear a dress like that? It doesn't suit you at all, dear." His mother quickly joined in, nodding in agreement. The whispers among the guests grew louder, taking on a more concerned tone. I turned to Stephen, eyes filled with a mix of shock and a plea for support, hoping he would intervene and stop his father's rude comments. The situation demanded that he stand up not just for me, but for the respect and dignity of our union. During our wedding reception, a tense moment unfolded that illuminated the dynamics of my new family. Stephen's parents, noticeably intoxicated, began to make demands of me, stating that if I were to truly be part of their family, I needed to prove my financial contributions. "After you register your marriage, you should give us a few thousand a month and your entire bonus," they insisted, their words leaving me shocked and my face pale. As they continued to berate me, my father, witnessing my distress, intervened. He took the microphone from them and sternly but respectfully said, "Enough of this. Don't you realize you're making fools of yourselves?" Despite his calm demeanor, Stephen's parents reacted harshly, questioning his interruption and degrading his status as a single parent, proclaiming, "Single parents are never any good." The audacity of their words stung deeply, but my father remained composed. He responded, "You people are even worse than I imagined. You even refuse to meet me because I am a single father." Then, In a turn of events that shifted the atmosphere, he revealed a connection that took everyone by surprise. "I never thought that someone like you would work for President Roy. President Roy is a respectable person, and I assumed his employees would be decent as well." The mention of President Roy, a business partner of my father's company and an old friend, visibly shook my father-in-law. My father continued, "And speaking of single parents, President Roy was raised by his mother alone, so you just insulted the president of the company you work for." Seeing my in-laws' faces fall with the realization of the gravity of their mistake, the dynamics in the room shifted. My father-in-law, previously bold and commanding, now appeared diminished and anxious. "I apologize, sir. Please don't tell the president about this," he pleaded, his tone desperate as he suddenly fell to his knees, a stark contrast to his earlier bravado. This moment was pivotal for me, revealing both the true colors of Stephen's family and the strength and connections of my own. It was clear that Stephen, who had stood by silently, might never shield me from his parents' overreach. This realization was painful but necessary as I contemplated our future together amidst the buzzing hall filled with our guests. As the tension in the room peaked, I could sense Stephen's defeated demeanor. The guests, caught between shock and amusement, began to record the scene unfolding before them. My father, standing resolute and unyielding, approached me. "No matter how much you apologize, you can't take back your words," he said firmly. He then asked if I wanted to leave with him, and without hesitation, I agreed. Taking the microphone from Stephen, I addressed everyone with clarity and finality. "Thank you for the great entertainment, but there will be no marriage," I announced, directing my words to Stephen, his parents, and all the guests. "I will make sure to return the gifts and contributions you made for this occasion." With that, I left the reception hall alongside my father. As we exited, I saw Stephen and his parents, their expressions a mixture of shock and dismay. In the background, his relatives gathered around them, faces etched with concern as the room descended into chaos. Over the following days, as I returned the money and gifts, the guests expressed their sympathy and admiration for my decision, commending my father and me for our integrity and courage in facing such a difficult situation. The aftermath of the reception rippled through Stephen's social and professional life. His coworkers, who had witnessed the event, spread the word about the ordeal. This gossip not only tarnished Stephen's reputation, but also highlighted his inability to stand up against his unreasonable parents, painting him as a figure of weak character. Embarrassed and unable to face his colleagues, Stephen resigned from his job. The fallout extended to his father as well. The president of the company, having learned about the incident through the grapevine, took decisive action. Stephen's father was demoted and reassigned to a remote division of the company, a clear demotion that sent a strong message about the company's stance on integrity and respect. As for Stephen's family, they found themselves increasingly isolated within their community and extended family, a direct consequence of their actions at the wedding. While it was an unfortunate outcome, it was a result of their own making, a stark reminder that actions have consequences, and sometimes these consequences are unavoidable. In the meantime, life went on, with lessons learned and new beginnings on the horizon. Since the dramatic end to my planned wedding, I've taken this time to forge a stronger bond with my dad. We've been spending more quality time together, and it has deepened my appreciation for everything he's done for me. One day, he initiated a serious conversation that took me by surprise. "Betty, are you interested in running the business?" he asked, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and seriousness. "Do you mean—" I hesitated, unsure of where he was leading with this. "Why don't you work towards becoming the president of my company?" he suggested. The idea was a significant leap, yet he seemed confident that I was ready to embrace it. "I'll do my best," I promised him, a swirl of excitement and nervousness taking over. I decided then to concentrate on advancing my career and set aside romantic entanglements for the time being. I was determined to prove to myself and to my dad that I could excel and perhaps one day be a great leader like him. Currently, I am deeply engaged in learning every aspect of my dad's company. The work is challenging but immensely rewarding, and I'm committed to seizing this opportunity. Reflecting on the wedding debacle, it's evident that Stephen's in-laws were quite unreasonable, turning what should have been a joyous celebration into a complete spectacle. Thankfully, since the marriage was never officially registered, I avoided a legally binding mistake. Now, free from any marital commitments and the potential complications of in-law relationships, I can focus solely on my career ambitions. It's liberating to realize that from such chaos has emerged a clear direction for my future. I look forward to the possibilities that leading the company might bring. I wish myself all the best and hope that anyone who hears this story finds something valuable in it. Thank you for staying till the end, and if you enjoyed this journey, please consider subscribing. I look forward to sharing more updates and insights in my next video.